Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton.
And this is Nate Drolet.
And we are back for the second installment, I guess. I never know how these things are going to come out in order, but this one will definitely come out in order. So, second installment of our What, When, How to Train series. This one focused on the New River Gorge, the companion to the Red River Gorge. In lots of things, I will go on record before we go any further as saying the rock in the new is way better than the rock in the red. Sorry, Red River family. It's just true. We're joined today by our friend Jeremy Rush, who is a New River local, has approximately 75 pages of notes on the new sitting in front of him, and thinks constantly about New River rock climbing. So, Jeremy, how long have you been in the new?
I moved there about 3 years ago. My girlfriend and I were just we just started dating. She was living down in the Red for a long time, and I took one trip up to Fayetteville and climbed approximately one pitch throughout Legacy. I was there with my buddy Zach, and as soon as I got to the ground, I just remember looking at Zach and I was like, Zach, I think I have to move here. That's all it took.
That's a good start. Was that literally your first rock climb in the new?
First rock climb in the new. And he knew exactly how to push my buttons too. Like Zach was like, Jeremy, we're going to this one place. This is what you're going to warm up on. This is what we're going to climb on after that. And you're going to be sold. That's
interesting. Lydia took me to Discombobulated and was like, you're going to like this one better than Legacy. And I did. I climbed them both that day, but I did like Discombobulated better.
Oh, that's interesting.
But it was a similar thing. Like, she's like, I know you're going to love this rock climb, so we're going to hike there and do it. You know,
that's really funny. Those are my first two rock climbs in the new too.
It wasn't my first. My first were trad climbs way back in the day, in the rain, probably in the dark because I was an idiot. And actually, my first rock climb in the new might have been a Porter 510 trad climb that was terrifying, super slippery, was not prepared. But the first several years there, I climbed all trad and never sport climbed.
It makes sense. It's great rock.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you are, I think, in the best kind of situation, Jeremy, because I've always said that to live in the new is the way to climb in the new.
Oh, definitely. It's a pretty hard place to just like take a very short trip to. I'm sure Nate can tell you that because he's done both, like living there and trying to take like a short trip and get as much in as possible. Stylistically, it's something that definitely, it took both me and Sarah quite a while to feel like we were really in the groove of climbing there.
Yeah, I can see that. Let's jump into what to train here. You know, every area kind of has its specific grip types and specific styles. What would you consider the most prominent grip type that people should be training if they're going to take a trip to the new?
I would say flat crimps, just specifically to grip type. The small holds there pretty much wind up being flat and often with like not very much texture. So you're not often pulling out on holds. You're usually pulling down on them.
Yeah, that's my experience for sure.
Yeah. I will say though that the new it's sort of bifurcated stylistically into, you've got the sort of like Little River Canyon style, like pizza box jugs out a roof, or like the Obed or
like
something.
Tiered roofs.
Tiered roofs, exactly. You've got that style, and then you've got the sort of like gently overhung face climbing style. And then everything in between where you'll have face and then the pizza boxes, or like vice versa. but stylistically, everything is pretty much these square edges because the rock is so hard that it breaks off in such a way that it almost climbs like granite or something. You
it
really
does.
don't get to like put your fingers behind holds very often.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, even in that steep terrain, it's very often just big flat holds.
Totally. And you also, like, even in the steep terrain, you often wind up pulling one of these tiered roofs, and then the face between the tiers,
Right.
you then wind up doing some, like, delicate or crimpy face climbing to get to the next pizza box jug or horizontal slot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Style-wise, like movement-wise, what do you think is the thing people need to be focusing on?
Very powerful, I would say. I mean, both Sarah and I, after the first season that we spent sport climbing in the new, we went to Waco and had our best bouldering season of our lives. And I've been climbing in Waco since 15 years ago when I was in college or something like that. It's very demanding in terms of power, specifically like I guess because of those flat holds, and often they're flat and slick. And so you wind up having to cover a really long distance from one hold to the next. Regardless of the grade range, like for that grade range, you're going to have to probably pull further off of worse holds and worse feet than in a lot of areas.
Yeah. Yeah, the feet are something that I find really interesting, that threw me a little bit my first time in the new, and it sort of makes sense why Waco would be a good prep for it, because you really have to start trusting some bad feet and learning how to get your weight on your feet, because the rock in Waco is slick in a similar sort of way. So I think that's one thing I think is really important as well, is learning to get your weight on your feet.
Definitely.
Which can be tough in a climbing gym. So you have to make a really intentional bid to learn that.
And I think too, one of the things is like, so when people think about climbing in the new and they think about the style there, I think the first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind is sort of the like, the high step New River, like, put your foot on the same level as your hands and then do a super long lock off to another horizontal or something like that. And that's usually because of the super high rock quality, you don't wind up having a lot of intermediates to grab. And so if you're on some holds and you look up and you're like, oh God, that's how far away the next hold is, either you are high stepping super fucking far and locking off as far as you possibly can, or you're jumping for things. I think both of us have, increased our ability to just jump for things, to double clutch for things. Like watching Sarah or our other friend Marina, who's like, they're both like 5'2", watching them climb in the new. It looks like watching like Japanese World Cup climbers or something, because they're just like flying through space like little flying squirrels and double clutching for shit. And I mean, that's something like that you really can't get around there, because there's often at least not a way to say, I don't like jumping, so I'm going to find a tic-tacky way to get through this.
Yeah. The faces are so sheer that they're just, and like, the rock is so good and it's so sheer that there aren't really intermediates. It's funny because I've climbed in the red for so long and it's much steeper, but I feel like I've cut my feet on, like when this last winter I was climbing on Coltrane with Jeremy, and I would say just one go up on that thing, like I cut my feet more than probably in a full season of climbing in the red. The moves are big, and you can either get a really high step and do a big dead point, or you can just commit and jump, which is, I do not jump on routes. This is definitely Jeremy's influence. He was like, I just jump up there. Just go for it. Double clutch. It's good. And I'm like, no, the bolt's at my knee. That's terrifying. Why would I do that?
That's the worst place for a bolt, actually.
I know. It's not close enough to like be fully secure, but it's also not low enough to be like, hey, I'm scared.
Like, that's really good beta, actually, especially for the shorter folks. Be prepared to jump. Be prepared to
Definitely.
be a little more coordinated when you're flying through the air.
Definitely. And I mean, another thing for the shorter folks that I've watched Sarah kind of go through this whole long progression of, as a person who's like 5'2", and I mean, when we moved there, she had bouldered multiple V10s at the time, but then was finding herself on 512s. That the individual boulder problems were very challenging for her.
Sure.
Because of this whole lack of intermediates thing.
Yeah.
You wind up having to get very comfortable, say, not only covering a lot of distance vertically, but also covering a lot of distance horizontally.
Laterally.
Exactly. Yeah. She had to get a lot stronger in her shoulders for making these like long lateral moves. She was from the red. She was very comfortable. Pulling down and locking off, say like inside her shoulders with her hands.
You can stay in a really narrow box in the
Totally.
red.
And you can kind of cave your shoulders in and roll to things there. And she spent 7 years climbing there. That was like her thing. And then coming to climbing the new, she had to figure out how to be able to kind of expand her box further outwards and to climb in a way that she was able to make big moves but keep her feet on when her hands and feet were really far apart. Where it's, say, maybe like in the red or in some other places she had climbed, like on limestone stuff, she was often able to, say, like get into really good stemmy positions or use drop knees and things like that to be able to have her feet a little closer to where her hands would ultimately wind up. And then getting to the new, she spent a whole summer just working on, we just called it like starfish climbing, where you're just, every limb is
Super
as far as you
spread
can
out,
possibly be from the other limb.
Yeah, just getting in big, wide boxes.
Totally. Although vice versa, I would say if you're a very tall climber, like my friends who are, say, like in the over 6 feet range, like Zach or Nick Smith, Lewis Aiden, like the guys who are really tall and climb the best in the new, it is astounding how these giant dudes can fit themselves into these tiny little boxes.
Right. Get their feet way up by their shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, watching somebody like Nick, who's like 6'2" with like a, I don't know, 9-foot wingspan, watching him, say, like use the same feet that Sarah or Marina use, and he can just like fit himself into those boxes. His hips dislocate, and suddenly he can use these feet that you're just like, that's absolutely inhuman. But people who can do that, they're able to then get the most out of their height.
Right.
So that's a very helpful thing for climbing in the new also.
Yeah, totally. I think that's really valuable. And I would say, I've heard lots of people talk about how the new is not friendly for shorter climbers, but it's entirely possible. There are people like Sarah climbing well there. There's people like Marina crushing there.
Oh my gosh,
so it's very doable.
Yeah, there's such a strong like lady crew there right now. I guess not all of them are super short, but a lot of them are very short. My old roommate Anna is 5'0", and she did like 55 13s this year. It was absolutely crazy, and she's the smallest adult human I've rock climbed with.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I really have always loved about the new. I used to MC the New River Rendezvous for years, and the crew there is just kind of amazing.
Definitely.
And especially there's always been a really great women crew. So
yeah, COVID was actually good for the climbing community there, because there was this small crew of dudes from like the DC area who had been down on a spring climbing trip, and basically got marooned,
stuck in Fayetteville
because it was like shelter in place, and they're like, fuck, we live at the campground. My friends Griffin and Chris Fogarty, like they were just like basically transplanted to the new by the lockdown. And then because of that, then we've now had this huge influx of people from all over the DC area and the Philly area, who somehow all have these really amazing remote jobs that I'm super jealous of.
It's a new thing.
Yeah.
We're all trying to get that.
Yeah.
You have anything to add to that, Nate? Those are pretty much the notes I had.
As far as style,
Yeah, like what you should be training.
I would say one other thing is, we kind of talked about dead pointing, but when, it's kind of like low, a lot of it feels like low percentage climbing there because the moves are really big, and this is something we can touch on more later, but there more than anywhere else, there are times where I will be climbing on a route and when we were just climbing together in December, I think it took me 30-ish tries to stick the move on, what was that thing? One for the Gipper.
Yeah.
And then I think I did it like the next try.
Yeah.
Like something like that. And that is normal. Like I can't tell you how many times I've gone up and it takes me 10, 20 tries to stick a single move. It can be 512. And I'm just like, man, I don't know. It's kind of fucked. And then I'll just go up and you just do it the next time. Like because things are powerful, the moves are big. Another thing we talked about, because the footholds are small, and they're really small for sandstone because the rock is so hard there that you can stand on just the smallest things, where in the red or honestly any other sandstone I've been on, that would just rip away.
Right.
Like the rock is too soft normally. So you just do these big moves, poor footholds, and it feels low percentage. So I'd say like that kind of style and being able to commit is really important.
Yeah, I've always called that execution style, in that, the red is very much a pump management style, and the new, you don't often encounter the same feeling as you do in the red, where you might get one move higher each go. In the new, it's kind of like there's a really distinct moment when you break through, and you're going to the top from there. But that move might take you a lot of goes to stick, no matter how many times you've done it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that comes from that there's a lot of hooded holds. There's a lot of slots that you are stabbing into. And if you're stabbing into a slot that's far away from you and it's off of a fairly bad foot, the move might not feel physically all that hard. And it might not be like that. That's why you can have, mid 514 climbers who take multiple goes to do a 12B. I've watched this happen several times, several different, specifically 12Bs.
Specifically.
But you can watch people who are just like way, way stronger than a root, and who in most areas, this sort of grade range would be their warm up. And then it takes them multiple goes just to stick this move, because either one, they maybe don't take the move seriously enough in the moment, or two, it's just like you have to, for that one moment, have laser beam eyes and just do this cobra strike into a mail slot. For quite a while, actually, my hardest on-sites were all in the new, and it was specifically for that reason, actually, because I had made the decision, like, I'm not going to mess around and feel out options. I'm just going to make a decision and go, and I'm going to commit to it. If I fall, but it worked out for me enough times that I was able to on-site my hardest things there, because it would be relatively not bad climbing up to a few really hard moves, and I would just get lucky and make it through those, be committed to those, and then I could get through, and there wasn't as much pump, So commitment is key. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
It's honestly kind of a novelty when you have a route that the pump is the deciding factor of it, because the way the rock breaks, there's so many horizontals. You're generally like, it's like you get to a horizontal, you shake, and then you do some boulder problem until you get to the next horizontal.
Right.
And so because of that, the relative V grades of the boulder problems can on a route grade can be way higher, because you get a good rest before it and a good rest after it.
Yeah, totally.
There's a lot more stop and go climbing, and sometimes it's the worst. Because you're just like, God, I've already done like 3 V6s, and none of them count because I'm getting like hand jams between.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little about when to train. So basically, what are the popular months? What I have down here is March and April and October, November. They may not always be the best months for climbing, but they seem to be kind of the most reliable and the most popular for visitors.
I mean, that's definitely when you're going to have a hard time finding parking at Endless Wall.
Right. Which might be the telling thing of all this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the good thing about the gorge though is you've got one side that's south facing and one side that's north facing for the most part, like within some sort of margin, and so it's like if the only time you can get off work is earlier in the season and it's warmer, you can climb on the shady side, and if you're coming and it's a little bit colder, you climb on the south facing side and you're in the sun. And then we also have, I mean, it's like there's all the other sort of like offshoot areas and nooks and crannies and stuff. And the way that the rock is sort of set up, there's a lot of dihedrals and arêtes, and it's sort of like, it's like a bookshelf of some sort. And so you can kind of like find the routes that happen to be in the shade or that happen to be in the sun, depending on what the weather's doing that day.
Yeah.
And also I will say too, like, compared to any sandstone area I've ever climbed at, like it just dries out very fast.
Yeah,
the super dense high quartz content of the rock,
yep.
It dries very quickly, especially since we're perched up on top of the gorge. You get a lot of airflow. You're not stuck in a holler.
Like
it's
you
like
are in Kentucky.
Exactly. Yeah. You guys in Kentucky have this like weird thing called condensing that I have hardly ever seen anywhere else.
Yeah.
And like when it happens, everybody's like, what is this weird water on the holds? Because mostly, especially in like the gorge proper, you just get a lot of airflow. So it kind of expands the climbing season there.
Sure. Nate, as somebody who's coached a lot of people for New River seasons, do you feel like there are any specific climbers who are better suited to a like shorter training cycle to get ready for the new? Like what I'm thinking is, if you're a boulderer, you might be able to prepare for the new a little faster than if you're just a fitness climber who wants to climb that same grade in the new. It might take you a little longer to get your strength and power up than it does for a boulderer to be prepared.
Yeah. That's a good question. Because I'm trying to think. I train quite a few people who climb in the new, but they're also like New River Gorge diehards.
Right.
Like, and that's kind of how it is. Like, the red sort of is a buffer between the new and all major metropolitans other than DC and Philly. Like you have to, if you live anywhere in a major city, you pretty much have to drive past the red to get to the new. And so most people who climb there, like that's where they climb. So yeah, I've worked with people who are boulders and more sport climbers. I would say that you could get away more with having less forearm endurance.
Yeah.
Honestly, like full body fitness goes a really long way. I had a guy who over the summer, he tweaked a finger. He had taken a trip to South Africa, tweaked a finger, and ended up kind of missing a lot of the training season, like recovering from this injury. But as he was doing it, he did the Kettlebells for Climbers plan. Did that. And then I also had him just doing a lot of big hold, like full body fitness climbing. And then once the season started, we kind of ramped up a little bit more, like the finger strength, things like that. But he ended up having an amazing season just because so much of this climbing is physical. Like, and yes, there are smaller holds, but a lot of it is like you need to be able to be powerful consistently over the course of a lot of climbing. So I'd say maybe boulders could probably get away with it more, especially if you can train that big muscle endurance as well.
Yeah, I think that's good beta. And, if you're looking into our training plans as a way to prep for the new, I think Kettlebells for Climbers is a great place to start. And if you're between a bouldering and a sport climbing plan, maybe opt for the bouldering plan, assuming that you are confident on a rope.
Yeah, if you know how to like shake out on a jug and things like that.
Yeah.
I think
specifically flat jugs.
Yes.
Yeah, I think also just like having spent time bouldering leading up to a trip to the new would be super valuable because like something Sarah and I talk about all that, because it's mostly me talking and her kind of just nodding her head graciously.
That sounds accurate.
Yeah.
But something that we talk about a lot that is very unique to the new is that the uniqueness of the individual boulder problems on routes it means that it's very hard to be so like whereas in the red you can like I think you guys talked about this about the red where you can break into a grade range and you're like now I can climb 12B, I have 12B fitness, so I get to go do every 12A and 12B that I want to do.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You get your feelings hurt if that's what you're trying to do in the new, because like you could have just sent your first 13B and then go get on a 12B that specific boulder problem just really gives you a run for your money.
Right.
Or, I mean, it's like, you might do your first of a grade and then be like, okay, cool, I've broken into this grade range. And then you go and literally every other boulder problem, the crux boulder on a route of that grade is just completely different than the one you just did. And so you have to spend equal amounts of time as the one that you just spent your whole season projecting.
Yeah.
And so
I quite like that, actually.
It's pretty cool.
Kind of keeps you honest.
Yeah. And it also keeps things interesting where it's just like every route is this like new adventure where you're going up and you're like, well, how is this going to make me feel terrible about myself today?
Forces you a little into being more concerned about the challenge and less concerned about what that grade means.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, the sort of like mindset that you have to be the sorts of people who I notice who just really fall in love with climbing in the new, it's sort of a similar kind of approach to climbing that I think a lot of boulderers have, where they're very interested to figure out the sort of minutia and the nuance of what makes a move work. And so it can be something where you're like, wow, that's very interesting. This is a grade that in most places I might flash or do second go, but I just spent an entire day figuring out where I had to have my hips to make this move work.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you've been bouldering a bunch and you're used to getting to a place and being like, okay, this move feels impossible, but according to the guidebook, I should be able to figure out a way around it. If you're a person who's able to not get psyched out by that and to look at it as like, okay, that means there's a way. Let's see what the way is. Then you're going to thrive on the climbing style, because it takes a lot of figuring, a lot of being willing to go back and say, okay, maybe I did this move one way, but is there a better way to do it? Or is there a way that works better when I'm a little fatigued? And that sort of thing.
Yeah, a little more cerebral climbing.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's they're puzzles. I treated it, whether it's even if it's just like something that I'm going out and having an on-sighting day where none of these grades should be very challenging for me. The sort of the excitement of it, it's similar to, I think, maybe climbing on granite and stuff, where you're just like, okay, this is this like blank sort of thing, and there's some sort of puzzle solving that I can do to get myself from point A to point B. And if that gets your rocks off, then you're just going to be in hog heaven.
Yeah.
If that makes you feel badly about yourself as a climber, you're going to be very frustrated.
Yeah. This actually tells me a lot about why I really love climbing in the new, even though it's not my preferred climbing style, because I actually do. That's one of the things I love most about climbing in general, is the puzzle solving aspect of it. So
Oh, definitely.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about specific grades, kind of run through a few grades here, and basically what the climbers at that grade will maybe most need to put their energy toward if they're coming to the new. So starting at 511, if you're looking to climb 511 in the new, what sort of things say this is 511 at the new?
Technical climbing and outdoor climbing skills, I think. Something about this, especially, I mean, it starts all the way back at what any grade that you start at, but up through, say, like the low 511 range, a lot of it winds up coming down to having outdoor climbing skills. So you're going to be, even if you're only sport climbing, being able to jam is something that's going to get you very far.
Yeah.
Being able to stand on really bad feet or understand how to use a feature. Like I said before, there's like a lot of dihedral climbing. So you're understanding how to stem, or arete climbing, where understanding how to use the feature of the arete, where to put your hips, how to just like smear and make a non-hold and a non-foot into a really good hold and a good foot. All of those sorts of things. I have a friend who actually grew up in Fayetteville, and I don't I don't know how long she climbed for before she climbed on plastic, but it's really cool watching her climb because it's like any sort of like kind of like weird nuancy outdoor climbing skill that people struggle to practice in a gym setting. She's just like, oh sweet, a hand jam, oh sweet, a knee bar, like
she just got it baked in.
Totally, because she just like somebody took her outside one day and was just like, yeah, this is rock climbing. It's not like, oh, I'm not a trad climber, so I didn't learn to hand jam or
right.
you know, that kind of thing. It's just like, oh, rock climbing includes hand jamming, it includes stimming, it includes finger locks, it includes heel toe cams over your head, and like all of it's just rock climbing.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'd say for the 5'11 range, like I call like the mid 5'11 range is sort of like the technical weed out class. It's like Calc 2 for math people, like getting through the like
can we call
11C
it Calc
range.
KAUK 2?
We could do that, yeah. Technical wizard.
Yeah, and something that I found really interesting about the 10s and easy 11s and the new is that it required a lot more patience than I needed in the red. In that the path forward wasn't readily available all the time, and I had to think a little more and be willing to wander around a little bit more and find my way through. And I really enjoy that style of climbing, but it doesn't feel as much like gym climbing very often when you're in the like 10 plus 511 easy 511 range.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, I think compared to a lot of areas, confidence is important on 511s.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't know, but they're so good, man. Like, what is it, Muckraker?
Muckraker?
Muckraker.
Is that right?
Yeah, just right of the ladders at Snake Buttress. To me, what's probably like 11B or something, but to me, that's just like the golden standard of, and anyone who goes and gets on this because I said it, I'm sorry, but of just like what 511 can be there, because it's slopers on slab, and you were just on from like the second you pull on to the second you clip the anchors. It's like that, and I think left of the ladders is Bone Master Gear Fling or something. But
sure.
Amazing. Like, so when I went there, like my goal was to just try and climb out as much of endless as possible. So to me, like, I loved the idea of just getting on these random 511s, and yeah, so much of it there is.
That's a stacked grade range, honestly. I mean,
yeah.
I remember on that same trip that Legacy won my heart. The second day we went out to the 7-Eleven wall at Kmore.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, just like going to that wall. So many of those climbs there, I just got down with just this big shit-eating grin on my face, and I was just like, oh my God, that was an experience. Going there and trying to on-site things in this range, it doesn't matter how hard you've climbed or projected or something, you're going to have to go into that sort of cerebral problem-solving, puzzly sort of state. And you're going to have to, at some point, you're going to have to be like, I'm not sure if I'm picking the right way to do this, but then you're going to have to go and commit above your bolt. It was actually a really good thing. Sarah had struggled for a long time in the red with her head game with falling and being scared when she had to get above her bolt. And she was always somebody who was able to like down climb back to the last bolt and stuff.
Popular in the red.
Yes, apparently she was often able to down climb the crux of roots even if she didn't think she could make it to the next bolt, which doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, you've watched it more than I have. But then going out and having these days of climbing things well below her limit, and just having to get to a point where you're like, well, I'm going to commit and I can't reverse this move. Was huge for her, and there was a whole lot of growth that happened in that first like 1 or 2 seasons. And actually, I will say this is a little bit of like local beta for anybody who is say under 5'7", say. Sarah made herself sort of a ghetto version of one of these. Have you guys seen the Kong draws? That it's like a long, stiff dog
draw.
ball, a dog bone that, and then the carabiner stays open so that you can reach up and clip a bolt, even if you're well below it. because a lot of the dudes that develop in the new were like very, very tall people.
Yeah.
That's
Sarah's
good
a
beta.
very, very short person, and so she just wasn't having any fun trying to on-site things, which is something that she loves to do, because she would get to some place where she's just like, I'm standing on a fucking ledge and the bolt's like 2 inches too far for me to hang the draw.
Yep.
And so she was having to do these heinous like smearing feet on nothing things just to get the draw hung, or she was having to be like, well, I'm going to not on-site this. I'm just going to like wait till someone has draws on it. And so as soon as she made this long draw to be able to use, even just the confidence of having it with her and knowing that if she needed it was allowing her to go and have a whole lot more fun trying to on-site things.
Sure.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. We might get rained out here. We're sitting on my porch and the wind is picking up, and that'll be very appropriate for this episode because I've been rained out in the new certainly more times than I've gotten to climb there. So we'll see. But that's what you're hearing back there. Let's move on to 512. Do the holds get smaller? Do the reaches get bigger? What's it look like for the 512 climber?
I'd say as you move into 512, I don't know why this is, but specifically 12B is this like very stacked range where there's sort of like this long list of cult classic rock climbs that are for some reason rated 12B and are just there to like kind of check your ego.
Those are good to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really character building, as my dad would say. But yeah, as you get into the 512 range, you really start to have these very defined boulder problems on routes. And it's going to be boulder problems that, like I was saying before, where like you'll get to a sequence and you'll just be like, that doesn't make sense. This is supposed to be this grade, but I don't understand how these holds even come together. And it kind of is a little bit of a mind fuck sometimes, because you're going on a route kind of thinking you know what to expect on it, and then you get to this boulder problem that you're just like, there's no way that I would have to do what I'm about to have to do for this grade range. And that's where like sort of the boulderyness of the climbing style there really starts to kick into gear. And I know a lot of people, I've got a lot of friends who are mostly sport climbers, and they'll say things like, oh, I don't really like to boulder, or yeah, I don't know, I know I should be bouldering, but I don't. And somewhere in the 512 range is really where people start to hit a wall if they just sort of have a mental block about the idea of bouldering and putting time into bouldering.
Right. Your thoughts, Nate?
Yeah, I think
With your hair blowing in the wind like Fabio?
yes, that's what I was going
glorious.
for here. Yeah, we really should be recording this with video. Yeah, to me, 512, a lot of times I think it's you start getting bigger moves and kind of irreversible moves too.
Yeah.
Like you start getting into these sections to where you kind of look up and you're like, oh, like you were talking earlier about the style and saying how sometimes you're just going to get to a move and you have to commit, not knowing if you're going to the right hold or not. With 512s, I feel like there's a lot more of that. You look up and you're like, okay, this is like a full commit move. So even
Definitely.
if it is, it could be 12A, it could be 12D, but you look up and you're like, okay, this is a move that's big enough. If I go for it and I miss, I'm not going to recover from that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where 512 really starts to like show itself, is in that style of these big, almost like unrecoverable moves.
Definitely.
Yeah, cool. And I think that goes back to your like commitment.
Yeah.
It's so important to work on that and have that in your pocket for when you need it.
Yeah.
I was convinced we were going to stick this thing out, but now I'm thinking maybe we're going to have to move inside. The wind's just getting a little crazy. So let's take a break and move inside and finish this thing up.
Word.
What's up, everybody? Chris here. I'll keep this short and sweet. I just wanted to let you guys know about our new updated proven plans that are now available on the website. These are the patterns that we've seen emerge after years and years of training hundreds of climbers. The patterns that at a specific level help those climbers reach the next level. And this includes our 2 newest proven plans, Just Climb More Boulders and Just Climb More Routes, written specifically for the new or novice climber. Why just climb more? Because frankly, we feel like the advice that most new climbers get, just climb more, is a lazy cop-out answer. While you will be climbing more, you won't just be climbing more. Instead, you'll be climbing more focused, more intentional, and you'll be learning a more efficient way to progress. We've updated those with weekly progressions, all of the most recent ideas and concepts that have been proven to work in training for climbing, as well as new videos for every exercise and every drill that you'll do. This is all laid out for you week to week, delivered in our mobile app. And you can choose to work with a coach. We've just hired a new coach to work specifically with everybody in these proven plans. And you can also join a group chat that's filled with other people also doing proven plans at the same time as you. Honestly, I don't think there's a better value in training for climbing. And you can check these out at powercompanyclimbing.com. Click on the Train With Us tab. All right, back to the show.
All right, we have returned and we are indoors now, not getting caught in the potential giant storm. So we're basically doing a new river trip here.
Yep.
And we're at 513, I think. So if someone is coming to the new, hoping to climb 513, what are the factors that are going to make the most difference for them?
I'd say at that sort of range, you start kind of needing to be maybe a little bit specific about which style you want to be trying to climb in, because the difference in how I would train for the roofy pizza box jug style, like if you're going to be climbing something at the Hole or down at the Coliseum or any of those really steep areas, versus if you were trying to climb the same grade at Endless Wall or at the Cirque or Beauty or somewhere like that, is way different, because the steep style, you wind up getting to say like rest quite a good bit on very good holds. Mm-hmm. And then sort of like punch it through some slightly worse holds, but where you're able to use a lot of heel toe cams and just like shove your feet into horizontals and stuff like that, and kind of like move quickly until you get to like the next break. And the relative V grade of the boulder problem cruxes is significantly lower than if you were, say, on the gently overhanging, say, like Central Cirque or Central Endless style of climbs.
Which makes sense because there's an endurance component that comes in when you're on steep stuff. So.
Totally. It's more about being able to do the crux pumped that feels very easy for you off the dog. Maybe even more similar, like the grades might start feeling more similar to a similar route grade at the Red on that steep stuff. Yeah,
that's my experience for sure.
Whereas if you're coming from climbing all season in the Madness Cave and then you go and try to climb that V grade on Endless Wall, you're going to be like, what the fuck am I supposed to grab right now?
Right.
And you want me to jump that far? So I'll say for 513, like if you're planning to climb stuff more in that steeper style, like power endurance is the name of the game. It's like, you get to wherever the good rest is, you get back as much as you can. And it's like doing interval workouts, and you need to be able to recover well, sprint through a section, get to the next section, recover well. If you're trying to climb in the 513 range, on the more like, we call it vert, but it's really, I call them Gita slabs actually, because they're like 20 degrees overhung. But the more like Endless Wall type style, you wind up starting to get these very challenging boulder problems that take a whole lot of finger power, a whole lot of ability to make big moves, to use very directional holds. And so I mean you could be on a 13A or B in this style and wind up having to climb like a V6 or 7. Whereas I think most places, in that sort of a range, you're more like looking at like V4s and 5s. And as Nate said, it's like the relative V grade of a crux can be much higher if as soon as you're finished with it, you get a hand jam that's just like,
Right.
It's basically a sit down rest. And yeah, so that's what I would keep in mind if you're trying to climb a lot of these classic, like the orange and brown streak, beautiful looking face climbs you've seen in pictures, or the like marbly white rock stuff. I would spend a lot of time bouldering before you come to that, because a lot of your fitness is just sort of going to be lost if you can't hold the holds and pull far enough.
Yeah, and maybe not the like typical gym cave bouldering.
No, like the tension board is great for that style.
Yeah, you're gonna want something a little lower angle, with some smaller holds, and not just the big cave pinchy boulders.
Definitely. And like we talked about before with like the flatness of the holds and the lack of texture often. Not that there aren't sharp holds, but with the flatness of the holds, because using them requires pulling from a very low position underneath the hold. Focusing on being able to climb square is a huge thing once you get into the 513, and really honestly, like the 12 pluses in the new, you can find some very hard boulder problems. There's a handful of them that have some boulder problems that a lot of mid 513 climbers will definitely struggle on until you figure out how to do it, or until you realize, I actually just do have to try that hard. And so if you're somebody who excels at twisting to things and backstepping to things and a lot of drop knees and stuff like that, a lot of times people have to sort of like rewire their brain for how they're going to try a hard sequence, because when you have a flat square hold, you can't pull out as hard on it, and so that makes twisting to things a lot harder. And because the rock, like we were saying before, the rock quality being very high means like there might only be 1 or 2 foot options, and so you can't necessarily just be like, well, I want to climb in a twisty, backsteppy way, so I'm going to do that. Sometimes all you can do is jack a toe really, really high and rock up on it, or pogo for something, or these sorts of things that, if you're somebody who's most of the time finding hard sequences and then finding your own way to do them, you're going to run into some walls. There's going to be some routes that sort of force you to climb in a style. And if you're not okay with climbing in that style, it's going to be kind of hard for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, something that I found in the 513s in the new for me that differed from what I had climbed previously was that when I would be on a 513 in other areas and I would encounter the crux, I would figure out the crux, my first thought was, how can I be more efficient leading to this? And how can I be efficient through here? Because I was a pump management style of climber. And in the new, it was more like, let me work through all the possible options here and find the one that actually works, because oftentimes there would be that one solution for me. It wouldn't be, I can do this 7 different ways. What's the most efficient way? It's more like, I need to cycle through all of my available options and find the one. So.
Definitely. And I think like body size and even just like, I don't know, like how your hips function and stuff like that. It's very often that you might watch somebody do a sequence and that way is just not going to work for you, no matter how many times you hammer against it. Yeah. I mean, that's something that both Sarah and Marina are very good at getting to sequences that they've watched, say, like much taller people do, or, you know, people with longer arms or something like that, and not being like, oh, well, if I can't do it that way, then it just doesn't go for me.
Right.
But saying, okay, here are the hold options, here are the feet options. Like, let's start from zero. Let's start from scratch and figure out how this works.
Yeah. Let's move on to 514. I've only climbed on one 514, I think, in the new, maybe two. So I have almost no experience at that grade there, and probably the one I've climbed on might be the one that's most like a Red River 514, you know, proper sole. And then I've also climbed on Trebuchet. But I'm curious to hear from you guys what you think the difference between 513 and 514 in the new is.
Nate?
Well, first, I just want to say that something a lot of people don't know about the new is I think it has twice as many 514s as the red. Maybe more.
I didn't know that.
It's unreal. Like, I cannot say enough about how much Mikey Williams has done to put the new on the map for 514. Legend. Like, absolutely prolific developer of all grade ranges. But I mean, it seems like every year I talk to him, he's like, yeah, I haven't been climbing that much. And then, like, you know, he goes and puts up 2 new 13Ds and a 14A or 14B that season.
Yeah.
And it's like,
also,
okay.
probably I think he's the self-proclaimed weakest 514 plus climber.
Not just self-proclaimed. I'll say it right now. He's the weakest.
Very few people do anything. Like, it's sort of a joke about, like, not doing things the way that Mikey did them, because he does them in just this very specific to him sort of way.
Yeah. It's amazing to watch him climb. But there are so many hard routes in the new. It's one of those things I think that's completely slept on. A lot of the, you know, and it makes sense. A lot of the strongest climbers in America live out west, and they get really sad when it rains. Like, you know, they've been living in Colorado and Utah. They've gotten soft. They're used to like 350 days of sunshine a year.
Yeah.
You know, they see a cloud and they're like, hey guys, let's go to Spain or France or something. I don't know. Season's over. So back to 514s. You know, I think they're so different. I mean, I just want to gush about the new. Like, as much as I love talking about Red River Gorge 512B and 12A and like 12A through 13B, like I could talk about that all day long. But the new is just so good. I mean, the routes are so different because you can have things like Sword of Damocles, which is super technical, a lot of hard power endurance, dead pointy moves. Then you can have Mango Tango, which is like a really hard ret technical, I don't know, V10, V11 on a rope.
And that's a life lister. Like, you can't look at Mango Tango and not immediately put it on your life list.
Oh,
yes.
Of course. And I mean, it's that one is interesting because for being maybe the most beautiful route at least in the East Coast, if not one of the most beautiful routes in America, it gets done very little.
Yeah.
Because of basically the like, you know, you must be this strong to ride the ride.
Yeah.
I was trying to think through my friends who have done that, and I don't think I know anybody who either hasn't at least bouldered V12 or isn't like capable of it but doesn't know it. You know what I mean? Like, just because, I mean, there's a very big difference in, say, being able to do a double digit boulder in the middle of it is a short route. Like, I joke with people about it being shorter than a lot of the boulder problems in like the Ali Baba cave.
Oh yeah.
At least hand move wise. But a lot of people who say like, come there and they're like, oh, I've seen pictures of like Mango Tango, I want to go try that thing. Just very quickly, like, go try it. And they're like, oh, we should find a different one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's just, it's not even that it's just like, oh, you must grab tiny holds and pull very far. It's like very technical and powerful. I've spent a bunch of time on it, and there's like one move that I still just like, I go to each season and I'm like, maybe this season I'll do that one move. And there's a handful of routes that are like that are just very, very bouldery in the 514 range that the only way that I could imagine being able to do them is to be coming straight off of a very good bouldering season to do. But I mean, then you have the whole flip side of that, where you've got these like mega endurance, super long routes,
Right.
you know, like Freedom Tree or Trebuchet, proper, like those sorts of things. I mean, Freedom Tree is like, you know, the climbing to get up to the crux is like, like everybody goes and does it as a warm up each day.
Right.
And then you just have this like very condensed, very hard, sustained boulder problem that you can't figure out how, when you're that recovered, feels so hard.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Yeah. You know, oh man, it's also good. But I think 514 is more varied there than most places I've ever been. And, you know, I think the styles start to blend more. When you are in, let's say, 512 or 13 minus, you have kind of the extremes of, you can have Keen Sana and also have Apollo,
Yeah.
which is, you know, Apollo's steep jug climbing and Keen Sana's technical face climbing. And a lot of the 514s, I think, start to blend. You start to, I mean, just the minimum base of power that's required is much higher. More than anything, the thing that separates 514 there from 514s I've tried elsewhere is you have to be able to just flip the switch. Like, you have to be able to go from resting on a good hold to flipping your arousal rate to just a 10 and just like trying to rip the holds off the wall more than anywhere. And I think that's probably is because the lower angle and how good the rests can be, that you're just, you know, you have to be able to crank it up really hard.
Cool. It's, you know, it occurs to me that the new, had it been highly developed and had it been, you know, in France or Spain or one of those, particularly France actually, it would have been like the world famous crag in the early 90s when people were really psyched on face climbing and, you know, doing these really cool blank looking lines before super steep climbing became all in vogue.
Oh, definitely. So. I mean, there's a reason that, at least if I hope I'm getting the timeline on this right, but I'm pretty sure right after putting up Mango Tango, Scott Franklin went to Smith Rock and just like shat on everything.
Right. Yeah, that's actually what got me thinking about it, was Scott Franklin coming and doing Mango Tango, that being like the prevalent style of the day. So very, very cool. Because the new, like we sort of started this conversation out with, is sort of the more time you can spend there in one chunk, the better it's going to be for you. It's kind of a locals place. Let's talk about a little bit of local beta, just, you know, things you may not know if you're just a traveling climber coming in, whether it's about the climbing or whatever.
The biggest thing I hear people talking about when they first get there is generally like getting scared. The way that the bolting, and this is maybe specific to like the older routes around the Endless Wall area especially, but the way I describe the bolt spacing to people is the guys that were bolting all of these classic early routes, they were putting bolts like where you would stop to place gear if you were trad climbing.
Sure.
So, you know, trad climbing, it's not like, oh, I placed a piece of gear here, and if I went in straight to it and then tried to clip up, I would place another piece of gear here.
Right.
It's like, this was a good stance. The climbing between here and there was reasonable. And then once I got to a good place to place gear, that's where I'm going to put the bolt, is at the stance.
Yeah.
And so,
I think it's that way across the grades.
Oh, totally. I mean, even in the 510 range and the 511 range, like some of the best 511s there are a completely different route. If you were to say like top rope it first, know exactly where you're going, have the draws hanging, extend some draws and that sort of thing,
Totally.
versus going for an onsite, because you wind up getting into these situations like we were talking about where you are already a little ways above your previous bolt and you're looking up at where the next bolt is and you're going like, you've got to be fucking kidding me.
Yeah.
But you just have to be like, well, it's probably at a good stance. And so the local beta would be kind of like a lot of the bolts are placed very thoughtfully at good stances. And so if you're somebody who likes on-sighting, it's a very fun challenge to go and climb it in the way. It really gives you a sense of like what the developer was sort of envisioning when they first bolted the route was like, oh, you're going to get to this point. You might be pumped. You might see how far the bolt is away, but you know that you have to commit to get there. And then you'll be rewarded by a good clipping stance of some sort. So yeah, I mean, that's something that really stands out to me local beta wise.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I'd say is don't trust the weather.
Yeah.
Like the weather forecast, and Jeremy was the one who really like explained this to me. He was just like, yeah, the weather forecast will say it's going to rain every day of the year. It's not. It's going to be it's still going to be climbable most days of the years. You just go out and look. You have to go to the crag pretty much no matter what.
Yeah.
Like you may even like hike out and you're like, oh, it's going to be gross. But then you get to the crag and more often than not, it's fine.
Just to piggyback off of that, because I've climbed there so much in the spring for the New River Rendezvous when it actually is dumping rain and super humid, have a backup plan if you're on a short trip. You know, if you're on a long trip and you can wait out the rainstorm, it dries up quickly, you might just be fine. But if you're on a short trip, have a backup plan at one of the rainy day crags, which are like Kmore or Summersville, particularly what's that area of Summersville called with Apollo? The Coliseum.
Coliseum, yeah.
Yeah, those are good rainy day crags. And, you know, if you stop in at Waterstone, they might give you some other rainy day spots around.
I think there's actually even a list of rainy day spots in Mikey's guidebook.
In Mikey's guide. Cool.
Ooh, another local beta. Shout out to Craig who runs Rangefinder Coffee inside of Waterstone. If you like some, you know, some kind of, I don't know, what would you call that?
Crack cocaine.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It makes me smell burnt hair. It's very good coffee.
It's great coffee.
And it just really, he does something to the caffeine in it. I don't know what it is, but yeah, go check that shit out.
Yeah, it's like a hipster little corner thing. Awesome guy who runs it, plays great music, coffee's great. You know, just go in there, support local businesses.
Yeah, and even if you're not a coffee drinker, Waterstone is one of the great gear shops.
Oh man,
of the country.
They're so wonderful.
Period.
Like,
you know,
I love the owners. Like, yeah, I like. There's even times where if I have to buy something retail, I'll go and I'll order it from Waterstone, just because. Yeah, they're awesome. And
they're amazing people. One of the best shops around. You know, a real throwback to kind of when pre-online ordering everything. You know, when you can go into a shop and they know what the hell they're talking about and they have all the things you could possibly want. They're ridiculously helpful. That's the place to go for sure.
Definitely. It's I mean, they employ so many climbers who come and need jobs in the area. They are great sources of just like any information you need to know. And also, I will say real quick, like on that note, NRAC, if you're going to come to the new, check NRAC's Instagram. There's a whole lot going on with access issues. Currently, the whole south side of the meadow is completely 100% closed to all climbing. There's a better explanation for it on NRAC's website. But it's one of those things that like it doesn't matter if you came down planning to climb there or whatever, just like don't go because they're in the process of trying to negotiate with landowners and stuff. And anybody who goes there right now is jeopardizing access long-term for all of the climbing community. Yeah. So go on NRAC's site and read a little bit about it before you come down so that you can be a responsible user. And also if you climb in the new or plan to climb in the new or have ever climbed in the new, go donate to NRAC. I mean, they put so much work into rebolting, into access, into building of trails, into negotiating with the Army Corps of Engineers about climbing down at Summersville Lake. It's a very active access organization, and I mean, like for the number of people that come down there, they really they need your support, and it's very easy to just, give a donation or sign up to be on like a monthly sort of thing where you can be a donor. And please do that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you said that. That whole crew is definitely the best example of like climbing, legendary climbers who have become stewards for the community. You know, and I appreciate that organization. I'll have links to that in the show notes right there in your pocket supercomputers. So definitely check that out before you head to the new. Make sure you're complying with what the locals want you to do.
Yeah.
I also had just as if you've not spent much time in that area of the country and you have a steel stomach, you certainly have to go to Tudor's.
Oh my goodness.
You can't not. Tudor's Biscuit World.
If you tell them you know Nate Drolet, they might know who you're talking about.
Oh my goodness. Don't. Okay. So I've got a story. I used to go to Tudor's quite a bit. There was a coffee shop. Now, my name is Nathan. I go to Tudor's every day.
Hello, Nathan.
So I would go, and there used to be a coffee shop, and I would like go there and either get a Duke or a Thundering Herd. And I would then go to the coffee shop. So I do this day after day for a while. I'm staying with Jeremy and our buddy Zach at their place. And so I've probably been here like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks at this point. And I go up and order, I think the Thundering Herd, which if you're wondering, that's a sausage patty, egg, cheese, and it's got one of those hash brown little biscuit squares on it between, regular biscuits. So
Buttery regular biscuits.
Regular biscuits. I mean, this is like an 800 calorie breakfast. I'm ready for the Alpine, but really I'm going to go like right programs. And I pull up and the woman who's run the register looks at me. She's like, should have known it was you. And I just like blush bright red, snag my Thundering Herd and just like stomp the gas. It's like, oh, I was like, am I a regular? Is this what this is?
You are a regular.
Oh man.
In that same vein, also the Route 60 Exxon. If you're in the mood for gas station burgers, these are not your everyday gas station burger. It's like very hard for me to drive past that gas station without stopping to get a burger. And at one point, one of the ladies told me the burger that I get, it has like nacho cheese and jalapenos and like just like all this stuff that is killing me slowly on it. And I came in and she looks at me and she's like, honey, you're the only one who orders that burger. And we are out of all of our nacho cheese and jalapenos. Which at first I was like, she knows who I am. This is amazing.
Oh,
exactly. Oh yeah, they have giant tubs of this shit. And I was like, I've made it. They know who I am and what my order is. But yeah, anybody who's like, especially if you're climbing a little ways out of town or if you're staying down at Summersville or something like that, go stop by. They've got your classic West Virginia pepperoni rolls. They've got all sorts of great baked goods, pictures. It's the sort of place where like anybody who shoots something amazing during hunting season, like that's going to be posted up somewhere. And
yeah. If you haven't been to Fayetteville, we've made it sound like there's just gas station and high calorie biscuits, but there actually are quite a few really nice places to eat in Fayetteville. So I don't even know what's still there and what's new. There's always new things when I'm there. So
by the time you get there, it'll all be completely changed. I mean, Secret Sandwich Society, which is a fixture for a long time, burnt down.
Really?
Last year, yeah, during the lockdown, just in this fire that Sarah was incredulous with me not waking up for, because we live like maybe 4 houses down from there, and I come moseying out of bed as you do during lockdown at around 1 in the afternoon.
That's what you do normally.
That's also what I do normally. I wasn't going to bring that up, Chris. Yeah. So I come out of bed and she's just like, "How did you sleep through all of the sirens?" But yeah, in this like blaze of glory, Secret Sandwich Society burnt down. And it's a building that was there for hundreds of years or something like that. It's right by this well that there's all these stories about stuff happening at during the Civil War or some shit like that. But it is no longer there. I've heard, I don't know if since I've been gone and staying out here in Lander this summer, if they've reopened. There's always like rumors of like they're going to reopen at the old Bojangles or somewhere. But at least when I left town, they were still closed. And then, I mean, like the place that a lot of the climbers go all the time is Pies and Pints. Go grab pizza and stuff. And they've expanded. They've got a big bar now and like pool tables and stuff.
Legendary spot for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk favorites. I'm curious to hear your favorite routes. My climbing experience in the new is much more limited, but I definitely have favorites. So tell me yours.
Nate, you go first.
Let me start with my least favorites. Everything at the Coliseum. I'm going to go on a slight tangent. It's upsetting to me when people go to the new, a place that has amazing technical rock climbing, and they go and they climb in like this steep stuff. Like they're like, oh yeah, I went to the hole and I went to the Coliseum. I'm like, well, why did you leave Chattanooga? Why did you leave the red?
Right.
What are you doing? Like, just go burn your harness. Like, oh man, to me, the new, okay. So I moved to the new having never been there before. Like I graduated college and I had just heard like it was a great place for technical climbing. And I had a friend who like went and picked grapes in France for a summer and like climbed in Seus on his time off. And he was like, yeah, it just changed the way I looked at rock climbing. Like suddenly I used to just be someone who only wanted to climb powerful stuff. And it made me appreciate all types of rock climbing going to Seus. And you could tell like this guy just loved everything. And I was like, I want that, but I don't think I can go to France. I'll go to West Virginia, the France of Appalachia, as people call it. And
Starting now.
yeah, I literally like, I graduated college, got in my van. I drove to the local gear shop. I grabbed Mikey Williams' New River Gorge guidebook and kind of flipped through it and then drove up and found a job and just stayed there for the year. But I remember I flipped through and there's a page, it was called Technicians Wanted. And it was Mikey's favorite of the grade for everything from I think like 5.8 up through 14A. And this was the best technical routes. And I was like, cool, this is it. Like, this is all I want to do. I just want to climb the Technicians Wanted list. And it's funny because there's also, I think, one called like the Thug Life list, which is the steep power routes. Turns out I accidentally climbed just as many of those, like unknowingly. Like at the end of the year, I like flipped back. I was like, oh, I forgot that this list existed. And I was like, ah, shit, I've climbed like almost all of this just like in my spare time.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, and I'm fine saying this because no one's going to go to the new because no one ever does. But it's amazing. It's the best climbing. Climb it Endless. Climb at Beauty Mountain, climb at the Cirque. It's so good. Man, I love it. And climb Mikey's Technicians Wanted list. He'll be psyched. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nate, does this mean you're going to come this winter?
I want to come back for Coltrane. Yeah.
All right.
So we'll see. I mean, I've got everything to do there, but that's like, I think Alex Magos called Coltrane top 5 in the world when he climbed it.
Nice.
All right. That's on record.
Yeah.
Can't delete that shit.
That guy doesn't really know.
If he didn't
much
say it,
anyway.
I just said that he said it, and that's, I mean, as good as
That's
him
good
saying
That's all
it.
that matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll repeat it a bunch.
Yellow Lightning.
Yellow Lightning.
You,
So
Jeremy?
favorites.
Favorites.
Did you give a favorite just then?
All
I don't know that you did. I think you
just
just
rambled for a while.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
just like
I mean-
waxed poetic and never really actually answered the question.
Smoke bomb. No one even knows that I didn't say my
Rewind.
favorite. Oh goodness. I mean, they're all just so good.
No,
Like,
that's not an answer. You don't go down that road again.
the Racist is probably up there, for sure. Like when but there's so many I just have good memories of. But when I was about to go, I ran into Russ Clune, who to me is just like a hero. But he told me, to him, maybe the hardest single pitch sport climb he had ever done in his life, maybe the best, was the Racist. And then he said after that was a climb called Libertine, which is just down the cliff. And I was like, okay, well, if Russ says these are good, I'm going to go do them.
Libertine is Porter route, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Racist is one of those that's on the list at the new to, be changed, the name to be changed, and, credit to that crew up there for considering these things.
Totally. Yeah. And they're amazing. Yeah, both of those are great. I haven't done Coltrane, but man, I don't know if rock climbing gets much better.
It is a gorgeous one. I mean, when I think of favorite routes, like I'm kind of just a sucker for any arete climb, right? So like my dream route, I think I have to, I can't possibly like move away unless I do Mango Tango, which could take at least 2 lifetimes for me where I'm at right now. I'm not exactly sure, but you know, as far as the aretes there, I mean, you know, you've got stuff like Gift of Grace, and what's the arete down at the Sunshine Buttress, that 12A down there?
Sunshine. Wait, what else is there?
There's not very much there. Horsen Church is the other like thing that people.
Oh, I
go
can't
there
think of
for.
it. I can't think
You know
of
what
the
I'm
name of
talking
it.
about, right?
Yeah.
I would say just like wander down any of the walls there, and if you see a prominent arete climb, do that.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick just one, I mean, Legacy, obviously, like it just like won my heart the first time I went to the new. For me, like, because I mean, my path through rock climbing has been kind of all over the place. Like I started off almost exclusively bouldering, then I spent a lot of time trad climbing and really just like diving into the whole. Like I fell in love with Squamish, spent a lot of time out there, and then sometime right around when Sarah and I started dating, I was like, oh, sport climbing is kind of cool too, I guess. Let's go to Europe. And so like I really appreciate when a single pitch of rock climbing can incorporate sort of like all of the skill sets that you would develop from like any kind of rock climbing. And so like Legacy, you know, you start off with some sort of like techie high stepping up, sort of like low angle. I wouldn't call it slab because you don't necessarily have to really just like smear and stand on your feet, but it is low angle climbing, and so you're doing some technical climbing. Then you get to a roof pull. You pull into a dihedral where you're kind of stimming and standing on your feet out super wide, and also using a crack as the feature. And then, you know, I mean, you go into more like steep roof climbing, and then a final little kick in the tail of face climbing. It sort of just has like chapters in this one single pitch. You get to go through sort of like some sort of like progression of every style of rock climbing. And to me, that just like encapsulates what I love about the new.
Totally. Legacy is, I think, often called, you know, one of the best 511s anywhere.
Oh yeah,
so good.
Scenic Adult also.
Yeah.
11C or D or something in that
that's
range.
a great one. Yeah.
Yeah. That one, like when I was talking about the very thoughtful bolt placement of the early developers of the new, that one stands out in my mind because it's like, you know, there's several places where you're sort of just like, okay, I need to commit to these like hard moves before I get to clip. It's not like you get to the place you clip and then you have to do the hard moves. You get to a place where you see what you're about to have to do, you start cursing a bunch, and then you do it, you're fine, and then you get to clip. And there's just like something about that just sort of leaves this sort of like magical sort of like mystery to like, who are these people who just brought that out of me?
Yeah.
And I remember on that same trip, my first trip there, coming back to the Red, standing in the pavilion, talking to a bunch of my buddies there, and like me and Hal Garner and Johnny Wesley were just like the same way that Nate just went on his like 45-minute old man rant. Like we were just like waxing poetic about just how amazing that one pitch of rock climbing was, Scenic Adult.
Yeah.
And there's so many of those, and depending who you are and exactly how something hits you, or like what day it is that you climb something, there could be a route that I haven't even gotten around to getting on yet that somebody is going to come across, and just the complexity of the movement, the setting, how pretty it is, the way the sun is hitting it or something, it's going to catch you and grab you, and then maybe you're going to be my neighbor soon.
Yeah. You guys both gave giant, broad, sprawling answers, and I'm going to give a slightly less broad, sprawling answer. I have my favorite route I have not done is definitely Skylar Engine.
Oh, that's a great one.
Just ridiculously fun. I've been thwarted multiple ways on multiple trips by weather, by bats, by all sorts of things. But I think my favorite route I've done in the new is probably not a popular answer, but Wild Seed at Fern
yeah.
Buttress, which to me kind of felt like a baby discombobulated, where it's like slabby intro, a little technical, and then kind of a committing move over a roof and some big pulls between good holds, and just felt like a really great 11A intro into New River climbing. You know, both styles, kind of the techie style and the tiered roof style. So for me, that one definitely gets the call as favorite that I've done there.
I feel like we should also at least include a gear route, because the gear climbing in the new it's one of the best single pitch gear climbing areas in all of North America.
For sure.
I mean, it rivals anywhere you'll ever climb. And so a route like Leave It to Jesus, I think stands out
is amazing.
Head and shoulders above. I mean, it's just like anybody who sees it is like, oh shit, I should buy a trad rack and learn how to do it so I can come back to this.
There's an 11D at Bridge Buttress. I think it's 11D, C or D. I can't think of the name of it. Maybe I'm even confusing the crag. Anyway, lots of amazing gear routes.
Yeah, and it's
of several styles, not just pure jamming, but there's also really cool face climbing.
I would even say that, I mean, when I moved there, I thought I was going to do a whole lot more gear climbing than I actually have, and one of these days I'll get back around to it. But I will say one of the standout things there is that just the pure crack lines are actually kind of few and far between. You kind of have to hunt them down to find something that really forces you to jam your way up it.
Yeah.
It's a lot more of, it's maybe more similar to trad climbing on granite, because you're doing face climbing sequences between different crack features or between different horizontals. And then when you do actually get some crack, like, you are very happy that you then get to have something so secure as a hand jam to stop and place gear from.
Yeah.
And one of the really intimidating things I think about a lot of the gear climbing there is just that that I've found is that you often place a piece of gear and then you look up above you and you don't necessarily see where the next piece is going to be. You kind of just have to like quest on faith and be like, well, no one's told me that this is a death route. And
right. Totally.
So props to, Pat Goodman and Mikey and all these guys who have established all of these things. And also shout out to my friend, the late Paul Nelson, who died tragically recently. He was just somebody who was very just in love with the New River Gorge. I mean, from the
fixture
time
in that community.
Oh my gosh, it's. I mean, his passing is like, it's going to hit the whole community very hard for a very long time. And I mean, he was just somebody who was so just head over heels for everything New River Gorge rock climbing. And he was somebody who really, he put a lot of time into going and doing a bunch of these routes that took a lot of head pointing, a lot of commitment. And he loved the climbing there so much that it was like, it was worth it to him to kind of like hang it all out there and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's going to be dearly missed.
Yeah, definitely shout out Paul Nelson. Let's talk must-dos. What's the route that you think most exemplifies what the New River Gorge is?
Well, let me start by saying it's on Endless Wall. Let's just get that out of the way. Oh goodness, so many. Dial 911's a great one.
Definitely.
At
You only get
13A.
Only one.
Oh,
What's your one?
I don't know how I feel about this. Jeremy, you can go first.
Can I have two?
Okay.
One
If they're
sounds like very.
You can have two.
If they're on Endless Wall.
I'm gonna say two, and both of them are the same grade. I would say Slash and Burn and Fruity Pants to me, like those two. When I think about climbing in the new, they're beautiful. They have very hard, distinct boulder problems on them. I mean, Fruity Pants, we just all kind of circle jerked about how pretty Mango Tango is. It's just right of Mango Tango, and it's this beautiful, fiery orange streaked wall. I think also it's something that has been renamed, and I'm sorry I don't know the name of it. But it's a Porter Gerard route. And it's committing, it's powerful, it demands a lot of you. It requires the way that we talked about those really precise, powerful moves to and from slots. It revolves around that. And I would say that's even, it's kind of a rarely done climb, I think because of it just being very hard right from the get-go, and people get on it and they're just like, what the fuck have I got myself into? But I think you were telling me that you had a friend who had tried it, and you said like, it might be 12D, but you just have to think about this like it's 13B or something.
It was one of my clients. Yeah. Like he's a great climber, and I was just like, hey, you got to start going out there and telling yourself it's mid 513. And then he ended up doing it.
Yeah,
But
give it that kind of respect.
Yeah.
you got to put some respect on it. All right, I got one.
All right.
Oblivion.
Don't know this one.
Yeah, it's
Can't
deep,
be right if
deep cut.
if I don't know it.
It's Endless Wall, as you can guess. It's so I mentioned Libertine earlier. One of the ones Russ Clune had brought up. This one gets a letter grade harder, and same length. I think maybe 4 less bolts. And the guidebook description, I think, says something along the lines of Porter would have put more bolts in if he could have found more spots to stop and clip. Amazing. Just bouldery, face crimping, like maybe 10 degrees overhanging. Just iconic in my mind.
That one might get done less than Fruity Pants, actually. That's
It's not a super popular one, but you can wrap in from the top, clean it up, and
character building.
go for it. One thing I'm also going to say real quick on Mikey Williams' guidebook. This is super important. I think his way of approaching giving stars is the best method I've ever seen. But for a lot of people, they will not recognize this methodology. If you go to the Red River Gorge, if something gets 3 stars, that's a choss pile. You're going to rip holds off, kill your belayer maybe. Awful. They give stars to anything.
Little generous with the stars. And the red.
Yes. Like everything is a 4-star route minimum in the red. So Mikey's method is it's on a 4-star basis. 4-star means you could pluck this route and drop it anywhere in the world, middle of Taipan, and people would still say, that's incredible. I'm going to go do that. 3-star means best at the crag. Like if you're at this crag and you can climb this grade, you go do that rock climb right now. No question. 2-star, man, it's still pretty good. Like that's worthy. And 1-star is, if you've climbed out the rest of the crag and you've got 1 star left, do it. 0 stars, 0 stars. There's nothing mythical
This only
about
works
this.
though in an area where there's not a lot of choss.
Yeah, and the rock's so good, but it's important to keep in mind because people might flip open a guidebook and say, wow, it's a lot of 2 and 3-star routes. There's only like 1 4-star 10D in the whole gorge.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, that 10D, you pop it up in Oleana, Chris Sharma suddenly warming up on this 10D every day. I don't think he warms up on 510, but I'm just saying.
It's a good guess.
Endless Wall, 2 stars. Go do it. Technical rock climbing. Oh man.
Yeah.
So,
For me, discombobulated gets the call for a couple of reasons. I actually have 4 other things marked out here because I had to keep thinking about it.
But I kind of want to know what they are though.
But I can't tell you. I only get 1. But because when I started climbing, there was a poster in the bathroom at the gym of Doug Reed on discombobulated.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And it just made me want to go do that rock climb, and it was years later before I ever went and did it. And it just felt to me like the ultimate puzzle solving test piece at that grade. I thought it felt like the grade was right, but you just needed to have a healthy dose of problem solving and a lot of different skills to be able to make it work. So it felt a lot like the new to me. So
Nice.
overlooked classics, and you've already given up Oblivion. So
Oh, I mean, Jeremy can go first here.
Overlook. Well, I mean, I used my my I guess second of my best routes was also probably the Overlooked Classic Fruity Pants. If you guys start talking, I'm sure I'll come up with something else as well.
The one I've got that I absolutely loved and have never really heard anyone talk about is Preparation H at Kmore.
Oh man,
I don't know this
that
one.
is so good. Yeah, Blunterette, like techie climbing.
It's so good.
Oh, really?
Everything I said about how good the arete climbing is at the new Prep H has that.
Yeah, it's just left of Pockets of Resistance, which, you know, gets all the attention over there.
Yep.
And the first time I climbed it, it either has a high first bolt, or the first bolt was pulled out, or I was just stick clipping the second bolt because I was scared. One of the three things. But I couldn't quite reach that bolt that I was trying to stick clip. And I was standing on top of a boulder. I was leaning off of it, and I had my friend like supporting me while I leaned, trying to reach this bolt. I had just gotten this new stick clip. Turns out it was a little short. I get the thing clipped. Everybody's standing there watching me in this precarious balancing act. I get the bolt clipped, and I go to pull the stick clip off of it, and it extends another 4 feet. And because it was a new stick clip, I didn't know that, and I could have just stick clipped the damn thing from the ground. But if I were a person who ever got embarrassed, that would probably be one of my most embarrassing crag moments. But incredible route. Also the like puzzle solving
Very
aspect
much.
of it's incredible.
It all revolves around figuring out where you need the weight of your ass to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you sadly have Hank Hillbod like myself, wishing you had an ass to put somewhere so that you could make your feet stick. I just thought of one now. Tongue lashing. That would be mine. It's when me and Sarah went and did this. It's out at the lake. It's on Long Point. It's a 12C, and when we went out there to this thing, both of us just came away being like, that might be the best of the grade in the region. And
Wow.
then since and it's also don't go deep water soloing, it's illegal, but it's also a very good thing that if you were to break rules and go deep water soloing, is a deep water soloing classic, because right at about the height that you don't want to have to dyno, you have to dyno.
That's kind of perfect.
Yeah.
Did you come up with one?
I mean, frankly, I think all of Endless Wall is overlooked. Okay.
Not now. You've told everybody to just go to Endless Wall.
Still, everyone's going to go to the red. No question. All right, I've got one. This is like a little silly, but I think it's one of my favorites on Endless, Central Endless. It is, you start Sacrilege and you link it into Jesus and Tequila. So Sacrilege is 12B, Jesus and Tequila is 12B. So
It's called Sacrilegious Tequila.
Sacrilege and Tequila, or whichever way you want to go. But you link it to, there's a crux up high, spoilers. You basically get to like a piton, you clip it, and you like go left and do a hard section on Sacrilege. Instead of clipping the piton, you go right and you finish the top of Jesus and Tequila. So you connect the two 12Bs, it's like 11C, amazing. Incredible. Like, it is maybe one of my favorite 11s in the new.
Cool.
And it's on the same wall as Libertine and Oblivion. Oh man,
There's a theme here.
Oh, exactly.
What's the name of the roof crack that you and I FA'd? Because that's certainly the best overlooked classic.
Nate climbed a crack?
I led it. Nate
Yes.
followed
Yeah.
and did not fall. It was a performance.
Yeah. Actually, Craig, who runs the coffee shop, just put some anchors in on it recently and texted me a photo. He's like, "Hey, I put some anchors in on that thing you and ODub did." I was like, trying to remember what it was. I was like, "Oh, that's right."
I'd
We did a
forgotten all
thing.
about it till you said that.
It was so the first pitch is Almost Heaven. And it's on White Wall, just right of Thunderstruck.
Yeah.
And then it's Almost Heaven, and then Nearly Heaven. Maybe is, I don't know if we named it. I think
Mikey suggested a name.
Yeah.
Mikey was there that day.
Yeah, Mikey was there. He had just climbed Hair Razor, his trad link up
Yeah.
left of White Lightning. But yeah, so I think
Yeah. So go do that one.
yeah, go do that.
If you brought the gear.
I mean, if you're also there, there's a thing called Cowgirl around the corner, and It's 12D. I don't know if anyone's ever done it. Also, the only other person to ever do it on 8A was Mikey Williams. And I was like, Mikey, what were you doing? What were you thinking? This thing's like, I've done many easier V8s. It's like 12 plus. He's
Is
like,
it that sort of strange, like pinnacle-y, like knife blade thing that's sticking out of the wall?
yeah, and you have to like mount it like a saddle too. Like that's how you get on top of it. But it's like
maybe wait till NRAC rebolts it.
Probably. It's like V8 roof compression to like a saddle mount to like 511.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah, so if you want to, it's not. Yeah, go climb on that. That's a really untrodden classic.
Yeah, and that leads us right into our last category, which is favorite rest day activity. So maybe they should just go do those routes on their rest days, since they're different.
Thundering Herd from Tutors. Full rest day activity.
Favorite rest day activity, Thundering Herd.
I mean, I would say go do anything you can out on the lake. Go paddleboarding around. Go explore. Or if you're lucky enough to have a friend or a hookup, I mean, obviously the biggest thing to do there is go rafting.
Yep.
And if you're lucky enough to meet, a lot of the locals just have rafts, and go out and go do some rafting with somebody. The other thing would be there's a whole bunch of historical like ghost towns and things in the area that they used to be little mining towns, or they used to be a little hub where the railroad ran through and that kind of thing. And a lot of them have these, if you're really nerdy like me, these placards that you stand there and read for several hours, imagining yourself living in this time frame that this place was thriving during. And so, go do the historical little ghost town tours and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that stuff. And whitewater rafting was mine for sure. And I know pre-COVID times, some of the rafting companies had like wing night and things like that. I don't know if that's still a thing, but was
Probably.
Definitely a fun time back in the day when I was in the new. So.
Yeah, there's some good hikes too. I forget what the point is called, where you basically hike down. You start up at like Kmore, you hike down to that point to where you look straight out at the bridge, which I think in the 80s was like the single largest single arching bridge in the world, or maybe our hemisphere.
Actually, that brings me to an interesting story. My very first trip to the new, we pull in, my partner Ray and I, and there are cars lining the road where we're driving, and we're like, what the hell's going on here? There's climbers everywhere, and we pull over and we just camp on the side of the road. And I get up in the morning and I'm walking down the road, and like through the trees, I see a person falling through the air. And I was like, oh my God, someone just died. And turns out it's Bridge Day. Had no idea that we were showing up on the busiest day of the year in Fayetteville. But,
Yeah.
Bridge Day it's like the way that 4th of July here in Lander is or something.
Yeah.
If you love things like funnel cakes and corn dogs,
which if you're from the Midwest, you love.
You obviously love. And for some reason put ranch on. I don't know why you guys like that kind of stuff.
Wait, on which one? Corn dogs or funnel cake?
I'm pretty sure if you're from the Midwest, you just put ranch on everything.
It just comes with coated in ranch already.
But yeah, all of those like carnival foods, they'll have all those out there. They put up like these big platforms and just do all kind of crazy shenanigans with base jumping off the bridge. And it's the one day that it's legal. And you can even pay to do a tandem base jump off the bridge that day.
Yeah, super fun. So I think that's all we got here. And, again, I just wanted to say condolences to the New River climbing community and to Paul Nelson's family and friends. Definitely a fixture there, legend there. We love you guys over there. So you've got our thoughts for sure. And just to the New River Gorge community in general, definitely one of the coolest, most accepting, most hardworking communities I've ever gotten to know. So thanks for taking me in the way that you did eons ago when I was a climbing rapper, and just showing the love that you did. So I appreciate you all more than you will ever know. And if you're looking for training plans for your trip to the new, we've got you. Hit us up. We've got all sorts of options no matter what grade you're climbing at, and we'll let you know what's the best for you. You can find us at powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find NRAC at the link in the show notes in your pocket supercomputers. Make sure you're checking that out before you head to the new, and support that organization. You know, they do a lot for the local climbing out there. And you can find us on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Pinterests, all the things. We've probably got a TikTok now. Maybe Lana's got a Twitch.
Oh God.
So be
I'd
on
actually
the
watch
lookout
that.
for that at Power Company Climbing. And, hit us up on the Twitters. We won't reply because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time to build.